professional coaching world, because they go together very well and can help make people in any role really more successful. I think that's it for me. Alex, you want to introduce you?
Sure. I'm Alex Kudinov. I'm in Houston, Texas. I come to the Agile world from a little bit different perspective or different trajectory. I've been a software developer for a long time. I'm throwing out the numbers there, and then I realize all these numbers are different. More than 10 years, less than 20 years. And then moved into building teams, building organizations, kind of focusing on organizational design, IT organizational design. And Agile thing came along, and I was kind of hopping through that. And then professional coaching came along, and I was trying to hop through that as well, and got stuck in there. So here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah. So big thing we're here to talk to you tonight about. We actually released a book on enterprise coaching. You can see it in Alex's background there. And it's called Enterprise Agile Coaching, and it's about creating sustainable change through an invitational coaching approach. And so I think it'd be good for us to get started just to talk a little bit about the background, like what made us turn to this invitational approach and what benefit does it bring. And so we'll introduce that, maybe talk about a few things, but we're going to be looking for questions from you. So please put your questions in the chat or raise your hand or turn on your mic and ask questions as we go along, because we want to be able to help you to get what you need out of this, the answers that you need. And so why don't I just talk a little bit about the background? So in my experience as an enterprise coach, I've worked on teams with multiple different coaches at multiple different clients for about 10 years. And I started to notice a few things that were happening over and over and over again. And as I went out into the industry and went to conferences and talked to people, I was hearing some of those same things. And they brought me a lot of concern. And I also noticed that the way I was interacting with clients was different than the way some of these other coaches were. Sometimes that was a big problem for them, not for me. And so it made me start to think about, well, how do you really how do you create sustainable change, and how is coaching really effective? So the problems that I saw were a couple of things. First, Agile coaches were coming into organizations with a demeanor, I guess, that kind of yelled out, "You're broken, client's broken, y'all don't know what y'all are doing. I'm here to fix you. I'm here to make it right. I know what I'm doing, you don't." And that actually turned into the next problem, which is it created a lot of resistance. Right? And so I have plenty of coaches. One of the first questions people ask is, well, how do you deal with resistance? I generally say, stop creating it, because most people are resisting you, not Agile. Many people are not resisting change. They are resisting you. I've heard coaches say that people are uncoachable. That lights my fire really fast. Nobody is uncoachable. They just don't want to be coached, or they don't want to be coached by you. And so something to keep in mind there. So anyway, the other piece of it that we see a lot of is that Agile coaches were going in and taking the reins from the client and really driving the change that was happening. So they were taking on the responsibility for changing. So what that left was coaches that were being really dictative and command and control, which is hilarious because they were the exact ones talking about those project managers who are command and control and those managers who are command and control. And it's like, really? Because that's exactly what you're doing. right? And so it just created an environment where when the coach was able to come in and get a lot of compliance because they'd report you to your boss if you didn't listen to them. However, when the coach leaves, a lot of those things roll back. How often have you seen organizations that bring coaches in, they're making all kinds of change, and then the coaches leave, and within 6 months, everything's back where it started? Well, that feels like a huge waste of time and money. Right? And so what I noticed over the years is that in working from a professional coaching perspective, which is more of an invitational approach. It's an approach that says the clients that I'm working with, they're not dumb. They're actually very competent. They know how to run their business. And I recognize that they know more about it than I do. And so they are a peer. And I'm not smarter than them. I know different things than them. And so by approaching people with that level of respect, you can actually build a whole lot more rapport and work together better with people, right? And so another piece of the invitational coaching approach is that the client has to own their own change. I mean, if you think about it, you can't change anybody. You can try. How many of you married somebody and you've been trying to change them ever since, right? It just doesn't work. It isn't going to happen, right? They're who they are. Change yourself. You'll be much happier. Well, so you can't change them. They have to own their own change in order for it to be sustainable. Because if you do the changing, you might be able to get compliance, but you can't get real change. They have to make a decision they're going to change. What people need from you is partnership, and to add your wisdom to their wisdom so that y'all can figure out how to fix what's broken, which leads me to the third point of follow the client's agenda. Rather than coming in and saying, here's all the stuff that's broken, this is what you need to do to fix it, I'm going to fix it, I'm taking over. Ask them what they need to fix. Ask them what's frustrating them and in their way and stopping them from having success, and focus on those things, right? So this is the general kind of approach that an invitational coach takes. It creates a relationship where the coach invites the client to be in the coaching relationship, and the client invites the coach to be there. You can't coach without permission. And so we want to have an agreement that this is the work we're doing together. It is absolutely not effective to walk into a manager's office and start telling them what they're doing wrong. They are not interested, and they did not invite you for that critique. Right? And now, if you have an agreement with them that this is what we want and this is what we're working towards, and they're open to feedback or they're open to suggestions, that's a different story, right? And so we want that invitation to be in place that says we are working together. We are both 100% invested in the client's goal. Right? Alex, what do you want to add?
There's a different facet to what Cherie is saying. And the facet is, what's in it for you? What's in it for you as an Agile coach? And how your day goes, and how your work life goes, and how your positioning in the organization goes. And if you adopt the invitational approach to coaching, your life will be so much easier. When I became professional coach, when I got my professional coaching certification, one of the reasons that I stuck around was that coaching is lazy profession. The less we do as coaches, the more we achieve. The less we assume we know, the better results on the other end are. One of the biggest competencies in the coaching world is being comfortable in the space of not knowing. And that's a complete departure from what we are being paid for a long, long time. We are coming in as Agile consultants. We are paid for solutions. And that is great. That's if that's what the client wants. If they want you to install Scrum, well, of course, you need to know Scrum to install Scrum. Nobody's arguing there. If the client throws around these hairy and amorphous words as agile transformation, you cannot install agile transformation. And I would argue that in a new environment, in a new, completely foreign context, you cannot even start applying what you knew from other organizations and transfer that as is to this new environment and new context. So what helped me from the professional coaching world is being really comfortable with the I don't know. And by the way, a lot of things that you guys are doing, you guys as my clients, I don't even need to know to be effective there. Yes, it's nice for me to know your business. I worked in a lot of oil organizations, oil companies. It's Houston. And the guys will throw out like PVTs and all that and how they drill and horizontal. I'm like, that's fascinating. And I don't need to be an oil engineer or drilling engineer or reservoir engineer to help you be more effective and efficient in your work. Being very comfortable in the space of not knowing and know exactly what you know, what you bring to the table, and what's from that can be most helpful to those people who have their subject matter expertise. That's probably one of the crucial competencies that coaches can bring to the table and can start leveraging in order to help organizations.
Yeah, and so what we're saying here is not that as an Agile coach, you take all of your knowledge and wisdom and throw it away. You still have to have that. Like, people actually hire you because you're supposed to have that. However, it's not thinking that your own knowledge is superior to what the client has, and recognizing that they actually have a lot more context for their problem than you have. Right. So if you bring, you've worked at other companies, they had a problem that looked a lot like this. In fact, it looked exactly like this. It is not going to be exactly like this, because the system that it's in, the human system, the technology system, the process, the policies, the political system in that company is very different. And so when you're working from this invitational or coaching approach, yes, you still have this stuff that the client needs when they actually need it. The key is to know if they really need your advice or if you just need to give them your advice. And so if they need it, fine, give it to them. If you need it, then there's some self-management that needs to happen, because you don't have to prove your knowledge for the client to be successful. And so when you share those things with them, it's done lightly, right? Here's what I know, here's what I've experienced, here's what worked, and here's what didn't work in my own experience and at other clients. What would something like that look like here? If you did that, what would need to change to make it fit effectively here? Because it's not going to fit the same way. And so when you're coaching, there's a lot of humility involved, because, like, yeah, I know stuff, but what I know, it doesn't make it the only way. Sometimes you have to sit back and say, well, I've never seen this work, but let's see what happens. And then you're really surprised. You're like, wow, that actually worked here. I've never seen it work before, but it worked here. You don't know everything. And so being willing to not know and letting the client make decisions. I think a lot of this is really wrapped around Agile isn't the goal. Where I see Agile coaches getting this idea that I've got to come in and tell everybody what to do, and that's not Agile, and that's not Agile, and that's not Agile. Well, Agile's not the goal. So what if it's not Agile? Agile is a solution. Agile is a mechanism to get business results. And so if you think that Agile is the goal, you've actually got the wrong goal. You need to dig deeper and find out, well, what is it the client is actually trying to accomplish? I mean, if the client is not making money and they can't deliver product and the customer hates the product they're delivering, what is you doing a stand up in 15 minutes and answering the 3 questions and being finished. And like, what's that accomplishing? How is that getting you business results? Right? That in and of itself, Agile in and of itself is just a thing. So if we understand what the client's trying to get to and we focus on the things that are stopping them from getting those results, then we can work together and build that backlog of, well, what is it that we need to focus on? And what does Agile have that might fix it? I can guarantee you that anytime you go into an organization and look around and see all the things that don't work or that are not Agile, believe me, I see those too. I'm like, yep, there's all the problems. I don't tell the client, I wait. And then when they start saying what their problems are, well, you know what? A lot of the things I saw are actually the reason why they're having those problems. So then we can bring that in and talk about what might need to change. And so a lot of the things you see as not functioning right are actually the solutions to their problems. But if you try to apply solutions when the problem hasn't been identified, people are not going to like you. And they're not going to want to follow you. Right. And so that's what I mean by letting the client drive. Sooner or later, your stuff will rise to the top because their problems will be solved. Right. So there's that big piece of that. And so, yeah, why don't we take a few questions? We've been talking for a long time, it feels like. Who has some questions?
I have a question that when I always kind of get stuck in this, I don't know what to this gray area between, you mentioned Agile coaching, and you would assume that if an organization is searching for an Agile coach, they maybe their Agile maturity is not very high, and they need some Agile training or additional knowledge or whatever. But there's that Agile coaching piece, and then there's more of like the life coaching piece, right? So the Agile practices and processes and all that good stuff to support your organization in delivering value, but then the mindset side, which is a lot of more kind of life coaching. And I get stuck on if your organization is fairly immature, you might need maybe more of an Agile specific coach and more education versus the other kind of coaching. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it makes sense what you're saying. So if we refer back to the ACI model of coaching, which I think is the best, right? It talks about the coaching, facilitation, mentoring, training, and then this Agile practitioner space, which to me is the place where everything else comes out. It's the place you have the expertise to do consulting or the training and all that other stuff. So coaching is a discipline that, to be honest, if we talk about professional coaching, what you called life coaching, if we talk about professional coaching, most of the conversations you have as an Agile coach are not going to be, we're actually sitting down and having a coaching conversation. I mean, you'll do some group coaching like retrospectives and organizational type retrospective events. You'll probably do some one-on-one with either individuals or managers, depending on what level you're working at, maybe leaders, executives. However, that's not the biggest piece of this. That is only one piece. So you can't get confused and think, well, every conversation has to be a coaching conversation. That is not true, right? It's that you are using some coaching skills, which are simply good communication skills, active listening, asking intelligent, good, short questions that make people think, noticing their thoughts, their behaviors, their changes, and so fully listening and communicating, asking questions in context, and it's the way of thinking, right? And so the way I think about this is whether I'm consulting or training or mentoring, I'm doing it from a coaching approach and a coaching mindset. Right? So let's take consulting, for example. If I come in with a consulting mindset, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with Agile consultants. The world needs them. Please call yourself consultants if that's what you are, so that we don't also get confused. But if I come in with I'm consulting, well, the job of a consultant is to come in and assess, tell you what's wrong, tell you how to fix it. And if you pay them some more, then they'll fix it, or they'll leave and you can fix it yourself. The way I would do consulting as a coach and from a coaching approach is, instead of me assessing, I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to find out from you what's broken and what's not working. And then we'll work together to figure out, well, what does fixed look like? How will we measure if we're fixed, right? What are the outcomes we need? And so what are some of the things we need to do to get there? Some of that might be training. And so we'll do training. Some of it may just be mentoring and helping people to learn their jobs, and we'll do that. And then a lot of those discussions come around through coaching. But I think of this more as the way you interact with people and the way you see people. You think like a coach. You think these people are intelligent. I don't need to fix them. And so that's how I look at this. I mean, training, the same thing. If you do training from a coaching approach, many of you have heard of like training from the back of the room. That's a coaching approach to training. You're setting up sessions for people to interact and learn, and you're just kind of dropping in whatever needs to be dropped in to keep them moving so they're learning. Coaching is about learning. And so if we approach things with a coaching mindset, our number one focus is going to be that this organization or this person, this client, is learning. And so we know Agile is like, this is a learning loop, right? We try things, we experiment, we learn what we want to do, we learn what we don't want to do. And so I kind of see it more like that.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Cool. Any other thoughts or questions? I don't want to sit and wait, and I also don't want to just like keep talking. So. All right. Maddie.
So you were talking a little bit earlier about something along the lines of feeling the need for yourself to coach versus what your client needs, or something along those lines. And I was curious if what you were speaking of is like you feel the need because you are either you're an internal coach or maybe you were hired by your customer, but that need for you to feel valuable. And so you're offering coaching rather than that's what your customer or your internal customer is asking for. Is that what you meant by that? Or could you speak a little bit more to that? Or if you don't remember what I'm talking about, you can also just say, I don't know what you're talking about, Lindy.
No, I remember what you're talking about. I want to, and I can answer. Alex, do you want to add anything to this?
I don't know what she's talking about.
Oh, well then I do.
Perfect.
So as humans, we often and as coaches, right? People have this thinking of, well, I've got to prove my value. Right? I've got to prove that I'm making a difference. I've got to prove that I'm adding value so that I don't lose my job. Or I've got to prove I'm adding value because I'm the coach and I'm supposed to know everything. And so, and what happens is that when something's going on, instead of stopping and assessing and saying, well, what do they need right now? Is this stuff they know and they just really need to see it from different perspectives? Let me ask some questions. Let me help them think. Let me make some observations. What some people get in the habit of doing is they're used to being the solutioner and they're used to being the answer bearer. So every time something comes up, they're like, okay, here's the answer. Here's the answer. Here's the solution. And then I hear coaches say, well, the client expects me to give solutions. They don't want me to coach. I think it's that their mindset needs to change. I've never had a client tell me I couldn't coach. And I have never had them complain about it. I work with them to solve their problems. And so I use a coaching approach. And if they need answers, then I'll throw some answers in. But I don't jump to give answers because I need to feel smart, or I need to fill the space, or because I need things to happen the way I think Agile should be. And when I find myself being really like passionate about things, then that's an indicator for me that I am probably looking at the client as they are not competent and that I know more and I need to fix them. Right? Even if they don't follow my advice, it is their company. They have to make business decisions, not me. And so I think there's that balance there. Yeah, does that help, Maddie?
Yeah, it does. And I think there's, at least for me, there's this like transition right now where I'm the coach, I'm the Agile coach. And so I think people are looking to me for answers, but it's my own internal security that I'm really like wrestling with. It's like, that's not really my role right now. Like, ask more questions and be more curious. But I think that there's this expectation from everybody in the room that like, oh, well, the Agile coach is here. Like, she will help us in X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, should I come off of mute? Should I be quiet? So I'm really struggling in those areas in this transition, and Leishan's here, so she kind of understands where I'm at. But anyway, so thank you for sharing, and that was helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think two things. So as Scrum Masters, coaches, we want to see people self-organize, right? We want to see the shift of power. So people have to be accountable, responsible, so that they can self-organize. And we have to model it. So if we bring solutions, they're going to always look to us for solutions. And so we create this vicious, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And we keep doing that. And then so they go to us for answers because they know we'll give them to them. The way I broke this habit and break it whenever I work with clients, like when I'm in a room and they're like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's not my decision to make. This is your team. How do you want to handle it? Right. And so I push it back to them. Like, I'm not going to be there. So how are you going to handle it? I can't do this work. You tell me what you want to do. And so I handle it that way, or I say, let me ask some questions, right? If they actually are looking for advice, not permission, because if they're looking for permission, they're not going to get it from me. They need to have their own permission. If they're looking for advice, fine. And I don't know enough to give you advice, so let me ask some questions. And so I start asking questions and sorting through, well, what all is going on. And in that process, they often get their own answers. And if they still need my answers, then okay, once I understand enough to give an answer, then I'll give an answer. And I'll say, what do you think about that answer? Or how would that apply here, or something like that? Because I always want to give the power back to the client. They need to own their own change.
Thank you. Love that.
And there's another perspective there, and it's a little bit different perspective. So we talk a lot about managers as coaches, and probably you heard a lot that HR is pushing like managers should coach their employees. And so there's absolutely fantastic book by Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Will Not Get You There. And there's like 20 characteristics that prevent people from moving forward in their career. They got to manager role, they got to from individual contributor to their first human kind of manager role, right? So, and one of them is, I don't remember what he calls it. He has some flashy names for those, but in the nutshell, it's over contributing. So when an employee or when anybody, when your friend comes to you and comes with a bright idea, with a great idea to implement, to improve the team, to improve the enterprise, to improve something, you're like, oh yeah, and by the way, and you start building on that idea, right? So what's happening, maybe your contribution is great. Maybe you got from this kind of SME role and now you're a manager and you are contributing from the bottom of your heart and your contribution is valuable. So what might be happening is that you are contributing 10% of value to the idea that was brought to you. And you have an employee leaving your office with 60% less of motivation, because guess what? This is not their idea anymore. They are not motivated to implement your idea. Same thing. So this is the idea of managers as coaches. Step back and let your people show and develop their own skills. Don't let them go over the cliff. Okay. Don't let them go over the cliff and kill themselves, but let them show what they can achieve. Same thing as you're working with your Agile teams. You don't want them to destroy themselves, but you also don't want to stop them or over contributing your ideas. No, that's not going to work. Or, oh, yes, we can build on this one and do this, this, and this. Guess what? That's not their idea anymore. How motivated, how excited they are going to be implementing the ideas of an Agile coach, rather than implementing their own ideas, iterating, inspecting, and adapting, and building themselves, and building their team, and building whatever they're building. So this approach that, yes, you step back, you don't let them go over the cliff, but you are kind of step back and maybe hold back your contributions. It's hard. It's hard, especially if we're coming from the consultant background, because that's not what we are valued for there. And that's where the value of coaching and coaching approaches, one of the value is.
And when people look to you to give the answers, and you will give them answers, if we think for a minute about a team that's working with a product owner, and they're like telling the product owner, you need to tell me exactly how to do this. What should it look like? What should it do? I need all of the requirements. We're not using our brain for anything. We want everything documented. Have y'all dealt with that? Seen that? Yeah. Well, part of what's going on there is, well, if it's wrong, guess whose fault it is? It's the product owner's fault. So it's a way to protect yourself from getting fussed at or from being wrong. And so when we think about wanting to build an environment that fosters self-organization, what you and the teams and everybody needs to understand is that you cannot be empowered. You cannot be allowed to make decisions and take ownership if you won't also take accountability and responsibility. Right. And so if I'm a manager, how can I give you, team or individual, autonomy when you won't be responsible or accountable? And anytime something goes wrong, you're going to point at me. Well, then if it's my fault, then I need to be accountable and responsible, and I need to make the decision. And so there's a teaching that happens, and a lot of it is through modeling of leaders let go, and whoever's under them, whoever's getting the power, you need to rise up. Right? So it has to be both. You can't have one person responsible and accountable and somebody else has power to make any decisions they want. It doesn't work well for very long that way. And so what I also don't want you all to think that Alex and I are saying is that coaches can only ask questions. That's all they can do, just ask questions. That is absolutely not true. Coaching has many competencies. Questions is one of those competencies. Making observations, giving feedback, all those things are included. Challenging people and helping them to see beyond where they're seeing. There's a lot more to coaching. So if you're that coach who thinks, well, all I can do is ask questions and I can never give solutions and I can never contribute my observations, know that it's not right. That's not what coaching is. right? I've run coaching organizations in huge companies and had a bunch of coaches, enterprise coaches working with different places. And the number one complaint that I would get from their whoever general manager that was running that part of the company, they would call me up and say, get this coach out of here. Why? What's going on? Well, every time I ask them for something, they say, well, how would you do that? They're providing no value at all. Anytime anybody asks them for something, they say, well, what do you want to do? Like, why are they here? Why am I paying them? And I'm like, yeah, well, you got a point there, because that's not coaching, right? And so that was the number one thing that I had to work with the coaches who I had on my team, was understanding what coaching is. It's not just asking questions. There's a lot more to it. And so this is why Alex and I teach professional coaching skills to Agilists. This is our main thing, is how do you use these coaching skills in the work you're doing so that you can be more effective, right? And so that's why we do what we do. Anybody else? Arguments, complaints? Nicole, what would you like to add?
All right, more is kind of like a scenario. So either the lack of buy-in from upper management, so they like the word, they like speed, they don't understand it, but there's also not the buy-in. So how do you're at the lower levels trying to coach, or I'll give you a part two if you choose. Like one scenario is I was with a scrum master who wanted change, but was, for lack of a better word, afraid of change. So they didn't want to push their people, but it was at the point where it was like, let's move along or pick a different path. So take either of those scenarios.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that you're trying to do the work, but you can't really make the changes that need to be made because management's not bought in?
Right. Yeah. What they want to see, you need their help to help the people you're helping. That's a lot of helping.
Yeah. So I think this, the way I try to help people understand this is more about what kind of engagement are you in? Right? Does the coach really understand the engagement that they're in? And are you actually trying to do that? Or are you really trying to do something else? Right? So there's a couple of different types of engagements. Some people just want process installation. They hire a coach and they say, go work with the teams and get them started on Scrum, make that happen. Great. And I think where coaches have the biggest struggle is they come in with this mindset that says, we're doing Agile transformation. 90% of coaches I talk to say they're doing Agile transformation somewhere. And I think only 10% clients or less actually want Agile transformation. Right? So there's something wrong here. If 95% of coaches are doing Agile transformation and only 10% of clients are, there's a problem. Right? And so it's understanding where you are. And so if they just want process installation, what that's going to look like is nothing's going to change. The teams are going to adopt Scrum, Kanban, XP, whatever it is they're doing. And anything outside of the control of those teams, often even product, they don't even have product owners. There's some technical person playing product owner, right? Then what you're going to be able to do is install Scrum or Kanban or whatever, and that's okay. And that's a legitimate engagement. I've done that before. The key is understand that that's what you're doing, because you're going to get real frustrated if you think you're doing Agile transformation and all you're doing is installing Scrum, right? And so that next level, which I call Agile adoption, is really what that often looks like is, so product and engineering are bought in and they're like, yes, we want to do this and we want to change, the way we structure and we want to change the way we do things. And so you can get a lot more done. I think most clients want agile adoption, right? And so what's going to change is going to be what's in engineering and what's in product, what those leaders that you're engaged with are willing and capable of changing because they have the power to. And so this being able to connect with those leaders, if you're hired to work with leaders, you'll be able to connect with them in most instances. And if you were hired to do something else, then there's probably a disconnect where the leaders don't even know what you're doing or why you're doing it, right? And so absolutely need to have coaching agreements in place. And a lot of this comes before ever taking the engagement. And then I would say that if the way you know you have a transformation, or you know you don't have a transformation, if the highest person who's saying we want this is not the person that is above all the other departments too, right? If the person who's saying we want agile transformation can't change sales and marketing and HR and finance and your people practices and compensation and all that stuff, then you're not doing agile transformation, because the people who can do that they're not looking for that. You're probably doing an adoption, right? And so I'm not sure, Nicole, if that really, did that answer your question?
100%. Yes, I have lots of things in my brain for tomorrow.
All right. Zahid, do you have a question?
Yeah, Cherie, thank you very much. And this is my first time participation in this group. So, and I'm connected from Sydney. So time-wise is really good. I have a specific question on the enterprise coach or enterprise agile coach. So the key stakeholders, when you mention about enterprise coach, so is it just the leadership that you have in mind, or is it the whole organization that you are referring to?
I'm waiting for Alex to answer because I keep talking.
Well, I would say it depends on the context, and it's pretty much everybody. So I'm CTC's team coach and enterprise coach. And CTC doesn't mean that I'm working with the team only. I'm helping this team and all that. I'm working with stakeholders and I'm working throughout the organization, right? So, and key stakeholders are contextual depending on the context of what's going on the product, on the team, so the team's needs might be just as simple as we need a process, or might be as complex as we need to figure out our hiring process. We need to figure out our funding process. We need to figure out how the heck this new stuff aligns with the values of 140-year-old organization. Mm-hmm. So to say that I'm an agile coach, I'm an enterprise or team coach, and I have this tunnel vision, I'm a team coach, or God forbid, I'm a scrum master, I'm not even an agile coach, which in our world is kind of junior agile coach. I don't know what that even means, especially when you start kind of going in Scrum Master 1, 2, 3, 4, and Senior Scrum Master, and Lead Scrum Master, and whatever Scrum Master. I have no clue what that means, except that it probably maps really nicely into HR systems. So what it means is that you, as an enterprise coach, will be thrown curveballs from each and every corner. You have to be able to work and to coach and maybe to manage down, outward, and upward. And you need to be comfortable. You need to be comfortable with, oh, those people upstairs, I don't know how to talk to them. They are gods or whatever, demigods. I'm not talking to them. I'm a Scrum Master. Well, guess what? Even Scrum Guide says that Scrum Master provides the services to the development team, to the product owner, and to the organization.
Yes.
And the last piece is so sorely missing, not only from the mindset of a Scrum Master, but also from the competencies of Scrum Master. So how do we bring more of this enterprise level mindset thinking? And guess what? If it's a Scrum Master and they are mostly focused on the internal dynamics of the team, that's great. They provide absolutely fantastic service. And if they need to get involved with the organization, they cannot go up and say, well, you need to be doing this because this, and this. That's coaching approach. That's, you need to understand what those people think and how you, in your position, can help them achieve their goals. That's the alignment that you can get through. You cannot get this through competency because, look, let's face it. Those people up there, they got there for a reason. They did something right in their life. They know something that you don't know. And you don't need to know that in order to be communicating well with human beings. However, aligning your communication with their needs, with their aspirations, and with their goals is the key for you to achieve your goals at the team level or whatever, in whatever context you're working in right now.
Right.
That's kind of another example of the how your coaching skills, if you have them, can help you move up, move down, and move laterally.
Or sideways.
If you
No,
walk
makes
into
sense.
an executive's office and start telling them what to do, they're going to throw you out. Especially if you're telling them what they're doing wrong in Agile. They're really going to throw you out because they don't even care about Agile, right? You need to go in there asking about their problems and how can we help you solve them.
Yeah. So so this is exactly the context of the question that I asked. But before I link it up with the next one, thanks to Nancy, like your message. Thank you very much. So when you get on a board, at the moment, I have been a permanent employee with the big organization and really have been enjoying it. Now I've already decided to move on more into consulting or contracting. So let's say if I get appointed in a new organization as a coach, how would you make your contribution tangible? Or so for example, in a project environment or a program environment, there are certain project deliverables that makes it tangible, whether you have achieved them or not. But from a coaching point of view, how do you make those outcomes tangible in order to get the acceptance? Or is it more of your own internal feel that you go that yes, you were able to contribute, or no, you were not able to contribute?
I think this goes back to the engagement agreement or coaching plan or whatever you want to call it. In the book, we talk extensively about this. We actually got several chapters devoted to getting started with the client. And so in short, you need to understand, and the client needs to understand, what is it you're focusing on? What are the key areas you're focusing on? And how are you going to measure success? How are you going to measure progress? And how does that tie to business results? And that progress is what you're looking at to say, are we making an impact? Are we getting where we want to be? And so that's the short answer, but there's a whole.
And if you want a longer answer, here's the book. It's awesome, and there's the link to buy it. It's a shameless plug.
Yeah, but we have.
No, I'm serious. So there are several chapters on the goal setting, on the type of engagement that Cherie really kind of skimmed over, right? And or engage us. We can talk about it for hours.
I like both answers. Thank you very much. And I think the link, Cherie, you have now shared it, so I'll have a look as well. So thank you very much.
All righty. Anybody else that we didn't catch yet? All right. Well, Nancy, I think we'll hand it back over to you to do whatever you want with it then.
Whatever we do. Awesome. Oh my gosh. I have so many. I don't want to take over but I have so many questions too.
Sure.
I'm curious, have you gone into an organization, I guess, as an Agile coach and maybe worked directly with the Scrum Masters versus like, leadership or any of the other groups, and like, worked specifically with the Scrum Masters. I'm curious how that might look different.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. And a big part of the role is helping Scrum Masters and I think product owners too, to really understand their job, because they're taking over for you when you leave.
Yeah.
They're moving into the coaching role. So you're teaching them how to do this work and helping them, mentoring them how to do this work. And I think that you're also coaching the organization, right? So it's not just, I'm here only to coach Scrum Masters. If you are, then you're probably in a installment, right? They only want you to install and help Scrum Masters learn how to do whatever it is they're doing. Right? And so I would say I have worked on very few engagements when I didn't work a lot with Scrum Masters. Even if I wasn't working with teams, I would create and help them create communities of practice where that was that source and that center of being able to work with whole groups of people.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I've been in an absolutely fascinating position of wearing multiple hats. And you know how, let's say in Scrum, like, oh, you don't wear multiple hats. So it wore a lot of hats. So I was a head of engineering. I was bringing in Agile practices, and I ran the Scrum Masters they reported to me. So it was fascinating to be able to implement everything you want to do, right? And see how these multiple hats interact and actually get in the way of one another. How you need to be selling your ideas to CTO and CIO, and you need to be coaching Scrum Masters, and you need to be running the teams, and how this whole thing kind of comes in clash. Oh, you cannot do that because you just said you were a coach. That's fascinating position to be in. Absolutely interesting. I would not wish anybody to be in that kind of position.
Yeah, when Alex and I met, that's what he was doing, and he's bringing in coaching. Like, ooh, this is going to be fun.
That sounds terrifying. Awesome. Anybody have any questions or comments? Well, I'm going to, lots of this. I knew it, Nicole. Lots and lots of thinking. Yeah, that's where I am too. You get excited and you get inspired by these things, and I can't wait for tomorrow. They're my ideas and my learnings. So great. So thanks, Maddie. And thanks everybody. Unless there's more discussion, we'll let y'all go and express gratitude to our special guests. That was really great stuff. And I'm looking forward to reading the book personally.
Well,
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.